Greetings ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mortal Kombat X Mechanical Breakdown, or as I'd like to call it, the game that's trying to compete with Unity about who's got the worst PC board, largest patches, game-breaking bugs and disturbing microtransactions. But, since that's a mechanical breakdown, let's get to it. Actually, let's not. You see, I'm an unprofessional bastard, but at least I learn quick, and from my Skullgirls experience, I know that unless I put a large chunk of time to a game like Mortal Kombat X, there's no way I'll be able to properly break it down for you. So, since I'm lazy, and I am, I have a special guest here with me this time around, and trust me, this fellow is more than a reliable source of information. Joker New 456. Now, apart from the reason you decided to fuck everyone trying to pronounce your name, please tell us more about yourself, and since I'll be off doing my thing, tell us more about Mortal Kombat X. This has been Lil Forever with today's video, as much as I did of it really. Anyway, see you guys next time.
As my horribly nicknamed LOLful never mentioned, I am Joker NU456, which is a just as horrible nickname, I must say. I have been playing MK since the age of 4, getting my butt kicked by my brother, and it was when I picked MK9 and watched my first EVO championship that I realized there is more to fighters that meets my 15-year-old eye. Then I went out to be the best that I could be, I guess, challenging various league players and beating quite a few. Nothing serious has come my way except an invitation to the World Championship and a few European ones, and I was dumb and cowardly enough to miss them all. And that's all, folks.
So I believe you played enough MKX, right?
I have played quite a lot of MKX. The hours I have put into it baffle me. I enjoy a good battle though and can play the same person for hours non-stop if he plays good. Also, the practice mode has become tired of me as I spent a huge amount of time in training.
Would you mind explaining us what are the main differences between MKX and MK9?
Sure. The main difference between the two is the hugely upgraded visuals, which are jaw-dropping to say the least. Every little detail is thought of. It's like NetherRealm Studios gets better with every new installment. That, however, doesn't make me forget the excessive milky WB Games has had a part in. Never mind though. All the characters are updated fully and look older, which gives me an nerdgasm, but the new characters are just as enjoyable. None seems like they are recycled versions from the previous game, which brings me happiness. And I'm talking to you, Street Fighter. In general, it is a full sequel, but misses the mark in some areas. While the characters seem fresh, the game modes have a been there, done that feeling to them. The game retains its focus on mind games, meaning you have to conquer your opponent mentally rather than only physically, which I really dig. If you play casually, this is of no consequence to you, but to be good, you have to adapt and anticipate. In other words, don't react, but predict your games.
With that being said, I would like you to tell us your opinion on stage interactables, something that has been implemented since its Justice came out and has made a great fuss about how cheap can be at times.
While I am always a fan of doing things on my own, and I can find it difficult to rely on interactables, I get so caught up in the rush of the fight that I forget that they are there sometimes. That being said, interactables are well balanced throughout. For starters, you can block them, they do much less damage compared to Injustice, but they remain a pain in the bottle nonetheless.
What are the differences between characters then and now? Is it better this way or the way back it was in MK9?
Characters in MKX are fully realized. No two characters play the same, which I find unique in a fighting game. Everyone has their own thing going for them. Raiden is all about lightning. Every aspect of his being is based around that. His particle effects, his defense animation, how he speaks, how he plays. The fighters have a unique personality and you really get everything you hope for. You see Aaron Black? He looks like a cowboy, right? That's because he's exactly that. Goro looks like a hard-hitting behemoth and he plays like that. I believe the developers really went to town with the fighters this time around.
Would you like to tell us a little overview about how characters work now?
Characters work largely the same as they worked in MK9, but with a twist. They have variations, which at first seem to be like a cheap attempt to give the game longevity and justify some characters not making the cut. When I played around a little though, I realized that it was not the case. Each character has very noticeable changes, both in terms of appearance and how they play. For example, Scorpion is a very generic MK character and is an aggressive rushdown type of fighter. In this case, variations don't change much, but put focus in different areas of his offense. Ninjutsu gives him range and upgrades his footsie game, meaning the opponent has to be cautious as to how he gets in to hit you. Inferno makes the opponent respect Scorpion's zoning and want to get in, which is exactly what a Scorpion player wants. Hellfire is all about pressuring the opponent up close because of a special move that increases damage and chip, but also makes the opponent take damage just by being close to Scorpion. Other characters change dramatically between variation. Liu Kang Duelist variation requires a lot of skill to use and rewards fast fingers. Flame Fist pressures the opponent intensely, and Dragon's Fire is all about juggling. Aaron Black, being the badass cowboy bounty hunter, has two variations that are kinda similar. Marksman and Gunslinger have almost the same moves, but Gunslinger does less damage and resets the opponent more consistently, while while Marksman deals tons of damage and is more about zoning. Outlaw, however, loses all range capabilities in favor of a very safe aggressive play utilizing a sun-tossing move and a command grab that shoots the opponent in the face. And he replaces his weapons with a torn-out Tarkatan blade. Kung Lao is almost the same in every variations, as they all focus on putting your face in the opponent's face, all the time. Buzzo is somewhat difficult to use as it requires you to hold the back punch button every time you use a certain special that is crucial for a good offensive play. Tempest alters the classic move spin and allows the player to move like a spinning top, and the X version sucks the opponent in like a cyclone. Also, you can make your hat orbit around you for defensive play and wake up insurance, meaning the opponent can't wake you up. Hat Trick is a very complicated variation that rewards Zone 1 mind games, as you place the hat in range and you call it back, catching the opponent off guard. Quan Chi is very well made in this game, as I believe he was a bit lazily done in MK9. Summoner variation has Quan Chi call an oversized bat that can attack in a multiple of ways and extend combos to protect his master for seconds after he is hit, as the bat departs after you get hit once. Warlock is a portal logic style that has Quan Chi have limbs and swords, track the opponent around the map, and link combos by teleporting the opponent all over the place. Sorcerer is a support-ish variation where he can place zones of effect in the ground and buff himself in 3 ways. He can either increase the chip he deals to the opponent, drain meter every time a special move lands, and gain a hit of armor. Kung Jin is a new character, but has a weird but cool at the same time Shaolin staff that is also a bow. Anyway, he can use it either as a staff in the combo heavy variation of Bojutsu, or a bow to effectively annoy the enemy by stunning, draining meter, and zoning him in the ancestral variation. His Shaolin variation gains a chakram that he can toss around and shit. Pretty basic if you ask me. Ermac is pretty much the same, just visually upgraded. His mystic style is the most similar to MK9, grabbing the opponent telekinetically to extend combos. Master of Souls has a damaging combo linker with 3 orbiting souls that indicates what the effect will be. 1 soul just does damage, like a projectile. 2 souls stun and do damage, and the maximum of 3 souls stuns the opponent, locks him down, and you can sort of detonate the soul to extend your combo. Spectral is just a fancy variation in which Ermac flies around and stuff. Jax is pretty much the same character, but with his moves from MK9 split into his variations. His air, grapple and throw are the specials in his grappler variation. Pump Dump is essentially his ground pound move and a mashable gotcha grab. His heavy weapons variations remind me of Mortal Kombat vs DC Universe, where his heavy weapons variation remind me of MK vs DC, where he has a machine gun and an RPG. Jax seems pretty recycled, actually. Kano is the same we know and love, but with tremendously fleshed out attributes. For example, his cutthroat variation handles all the bladey stuff and gains shanky moves as combo openers. His cybernetic variation focuses on all the techie shenanigans he has, such as his cyber eye. In this variation, he's all about the beams and the lasers, extending combos and gaining improved projectile speed. Commando Kano is about close range combat, going in the opponent's face and performing mind games while he catches the opponent's impulsive attacks with his high and low parries. He also has some command grabs that has the opponent guessing whether he should block high or low. Also, he's cheap as fuck with all the grabs that he can deal with, all the grabs that deal way more damage than they should, and they can be easily used to end combos for even more extreme damage for no apparent fucking reason. In MKX, Kenshi is a real well-made character for the solemn reason that the game is upgraded visually and everything he does just looks cooler, and this is a big part, especially in fighting games. His balanced version is basically MK9 version. His balanced version is basically the MK9 version, which is approximately the same moves with slight frame differences. Kenjutsu Kenshi focuses more on his sword and acrobatic movement and effective zoning, though less than the balanced variation. Possessed variation summons a demon from his shattered blade that replaces all of his special moves and gives them different properties and focuses on dealing damage. Also, it goes without saying that he looks badass with his manly beard and all. Kitana fell victim to the feminazi thing that has been going on for some months and looks really covered. Like, really covered. But I'm here to discuss gameplay, not appearance, so yeah. Her assassin variation deals jeep fucking damage. How does 21% with no meter and only using 3 inputs sound like? That is if you don't know how to block. But everyone gets caught off guard once in a while. Royal Storm is, as you've heard me say many times before, it's just a visually upgraded version from MK9. Mournful variation is essentially Jade conjoined with Kitana just because she couldn't be in the final roster. Space was the reason. Melina is sexy as hell, and anyone who says otherwise is gonna get his eyeball chewed off. Revenus is the good old carnivore chick for you, meaning her combo enders focus around eating tasty bits of your opponents. Mostly the fat-free parts though, she's on a diet I heard. Stabby, I mean piercing variation, as the name suggests, has Melina covered with earrings. I'm just fucking with you. All she just is basically stab you in the sternum about 7 times. Alright, can't really count. This variation deals damage as the previous one, but the only difference being that the way you deal the damage is with size instead of teeth. The ethereal variation just teleports all over the place and toys with your opponent, reflecting Melina's character. Moving on to the lizard. I mean reptile. These are just synonyms, you know what I'm talking about. Departing from the terrible designs from previous games, Reptile is surprisingly more beautifully disgusting this time, with all his bony parts and all. MKX Reptile is a mix of MK9 and Injustice's Flash, but let me explain. All of his classic moves are there. For example, in the Noxious variation, he just makes the enemy slowly die of stink by just being close to him. Soap wouldn't go amiss, I guess. The Nipple variation essentially steals Flash's character trait from Injustice by making the screen turn red and the opponent moves slow as a snail. The evasive variation just isolates the invisibility move and names a variation out of it. Time for the bad guy of the game, Shinnok, and boy is he awesome. He has the scythe of Grim Reaper himself and the badass voice of some badass voice actor. He dies like a little bitch in story mode. Oops, spoiler alert, but I still love him. The Imposter variation steals a certain move from each character he faces, and I'm not gonna make a list of that for the sake of making this video kind of in time, but you can always look it up on wiki. Necromancer variation makes his hands all bony, and by that I don't mean that he goes on a strict diet, I mean he literally has hands made of bones. Look at these things! In this variation, he summons giant bone hands that flick the enemy around and squashes the enemy like a bug, or a rat, whatever's your fix. Last but not least, Bone Shaper is a badass looking variation which grants him a bone scythe, and oh my god with the word bone. As I was saying, the bone scythe functions similarly to Aquaman's trident in Injustice, meaning he flails the character around the screen to extend combos and deal more damage. As I mentioned before, Sonya Blade departs from her exposed look to a more realistic military outfit. However, she remains just as good a character as ever. Demolition variation is a tricky one as it requires you to anticipate your opponent's moves, manage the amount of grenades you have on your person, maximum of 3, but it is a good variation and I would not recommend it to newcomers though. Covert Ops is the most similar to MK9 and in this case there's nothing wrong with it because in the previous game she was a really balanced character. Having said that, she gained some new moves that are her parry, which makes a seriously orgasmic sound that would make Agent 47 jealous, and an updated version of her military stance. Special Forces utilizes the kill streak from the Call of Duty series, the Dragonfly, to do her master's beating, and with that I mean that it can kamikaze drop, destroying itself, and shoot 2 kinds of projectiles, shotgun blast or tracking light. Back to the all-faithful, no-good, all-loved classic as hell, cooler than a ratio with an ice bucket, Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero in this game is made the way he should be, because he was pretty basic in MK9 with all his icy stuff and shit. For a main protagonist at least. For example, the Cryomancer variation conjures ice weapons, improving the range and damage of the uppercut, and getting an ice hammer move that links combos and does a hefty amount of damage. Grandmaster variation is more complicated than it should be in terms of leaking combos, when trying to escape zoning and defend against fast characters, it is invaluable. Unbreakable style is even more defensive, providing him with an ice wall move that freezes the opponent on contact and gains a special move that eliminates chip and even reduces the damage of clean hits if it is enhanced. Cassie Cage is the trolliest character in all MKX. Yes, that's a word from now on. Her X-ray is trolly. Her fatality is trolly. Her moves are trolly. She's like a modern era embodiment of teens. The Hollywood variation gains the ability to use her pistols mid-air and double fist punching her opponent's nuts, following her dad's example. Well, the apple does not fall far from the tree as it appears. Brawler variation is exactly what it sounds, as she gracefully introduces her fists with the opponent's face, and generally gaming moves that cater towards the aggressive playstyle of getting you into your opponent's face and vortexing him, meaning that you keep him standing and never be able to wake up. Special Ops variation has the best special move since the dawn of time itself, which is no other than the American Way. The American Way does way more damage psychologically to your opponent than it does physically, just like the real world USA. Please don't bomb us. She can also call down airstrikes caging her opponent, pun intended. Devora is a pretty slimy looking character, and she plays like that. She's dirty as hell, or maybe as Kim Kardashian herself, as hard as that may be. The Poisonous variation does super effective damage on grass type Pokemons. I mean does slight poison damage for every hit you manage to land, and is the nightmare of every defensive character. Also, the variation's name is Venomous. I just really wanted to make a Pokemon joke. In Broodmother, she throws a little bugger on the ground, literally, because it's a bug and it's a joke. It's a play on words. Never mind. That locks down the opponent, giving Devora the ability to rush him down and get in close. Swarm Queen gives her the ability to zone the opponent more effectively than the other, as she can throw bug grenades and summon fly swarms beneath the opponent's feet, which is also a combo starter. Ferrator is a really fun character being a huge monster ridden by a small girl, someone called CBS, fast. The lucky variation focuses on Thor, as he leaves to the side of the arena while getting down and dirty with the opponent. This variation focuses on aggressive rushdown play and grappling. The vicious variation sacrifices Thor health for more damage, so it's more like a pain and gain thingy, or risk and reward, or whatever other play on words you want to use. Ruthless is the variation in which both partners do the same work. Thor smashes up close and Farah is being tossed all over the place as a projectile. Wow, tossing kids around was never more exciting. Kotal Khan is a badass love letter of fans of Mayan or Aztec mythology and really supports the ideology of Mayan warriors. He is the new Emperor of Outworld in MKX, and the way he plays really sells the whole powerhouse type of character, as he hits hard and you can feel it through the screen. You can literally see the camera shaking. The Sun God variation has the throw that uses up to 3 animations that unlock each time you do the previous one. For every time you perform that throw, the tribal tattoos light up, giving you the options to cash out the charges for meter, but by doing so, the throw's damage resets. War God utilizes an ancient Mayan weapon of obsidian. An obsidian club that is used both as a clobbering tool and as a projectile. You can cut your opponent, slam the grout, or throw it in his face. The choice is yours. Now, the Totem God is the cheapest of them all and gives Cody 3 totems to abuse their power. The first one gives him an insane damage buff that can essentially poke your opponent to death. If you stack the damage from Blood Offering and the totem, you can deal gigantic amounts of damage up to 102% and really makes your friends throw their controllers in uncontrollable anger. Sending second totem decreases the amount of chip damage you take, and the third one gives you Vampiric Touch, meaning you restore a little amount of your health with each hit you land successfully. Jackie Briggs is a character that has been put in the game for the first time, and it will probably be her last, so I hope. Except from the fact that Jax is her father and she is needlessly included, she has some pretty spammy moves across all of her variations. She has an incredibly fast dash move and a clobbering flurry of fists. Her first variation is called Shotgun and is exactly what it sounds, like she uses her shotgun. She can either shoot it in front of her opponent to stun him, or straight at him, but is limited in range nonetheless. High Tech gives her a defensive barrier that soaks up projectiles and a stacking damage buff to her fists. Full Auto is the annoying Deathstroke of the game, where she can just spam the machine guns and rockets. Overall, she's a pretty well balanced character, nicely designed too, but she just feels unneeded. Now, Johnny Cage remains mostly the same, being as he was the first MK character, and changing something iconic would only serve them with riots in the streets. Fisticuffs has Johnny wear the knuckles with his name on them, for fuck's sake, and is mostly centered around increased chip and a very satisfying combo which bashes the opponent's face with 9 punches. Stun Double is essentially Noob Saibot implemented to his fabulous image, as he can stack up to 2 shadow versions of himself and throw them as projectiles. A-List is an aggressive style which charges special moves for increased damage and technical interruptions, such as wake-ups and tech rolls. Last but not least is Takeda, a seriously over-the-top character. He's the son of Kenshi and trained by a scorpion in the ways of the ninja. Give him elements of both, and in terms of his appearance and in terms of character. Shirai Ryu gives him Scorpion's signature move, but in a much cooler fashion, and he can extend combos if he's enhanced. He can teleport around the place, throw shurikens at the ground, hitting low, and making him an excellent character for aggressive play, as the opponent must always guess which direction to block, low or overhead. Not to mention the increased range of many of his combos. Did I forget to mention that he has bladed whips? These things are awesome. The laser variation is focused more on the whips, making them a primary combo starters, and taking his range to the next level, as he now has an anti-air move which is seriously annoying. Finally, the Ronin variation changes many of his specials with lightsabers, give him a Jedi feel. These blades are so badass that he can summon them and telekinetically control them and place them around the map as traps. Well, I think that does it. Oh yeah, I left Goro out on purpose because he's a DLC character, just as Jason, so I wanted to review the original ones.
Thank you for explaining and analyzing each character, but mostly thank you for your time for being to the show.
And thank you for having me, guys.
Well, you heard it from an expert, so we didn't have to. Until next time, this is Peanut Gamers
signing out.